I will call the March 26th meeting of the Common Council to order. If you would all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Megan Wiles.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Lees, will you call the roll?
Mr. Boyce? Mr. Davis?
Present.
Mr. Elliott?
Present.
Mr. Johnson?
Present.
Mr. Schwartz? Mr. Smith?
Present.
Mr. Thurston?
Present.
Ms. Wiles?
Present.
Mr. Peterson?
Present.
Mr. President, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Have approval of our March 12th meeting. Approval of the minutes.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the minutes from our March 12th meeting. There's a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 7-0. 6 to 0 to 1. Approval of the agenda.
Mr. President, I would move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the agenda. This is also a hand vote. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. 7-0. Petitions or comments by citizens who are present. There are white cards out front if anybody has any comments, other than Mr. Hughes. Mayor's comments. Council committee reports. The utilities. Mike Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. We met March 14th. Pete Schwartz, Mark Boyce, Evan Elliott, and myself. Jonathan McGraw, our administrator at the sewer plant, went over the 2024 sewer rate adjustment and the different adjustment amounts and the timing of the rate increments for the coming year. We talked about a stormwater fee that is somewhat new and being looked at. We talked about the LTCP compliance plan and the BOT sludge process improvements. And the final thing we talked about was the White River Alliance and what our commitment is and what we're doing with them in the coming year. And that was it.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Davis? Downtown District Committee. Aaron Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President. Downtown District Committee met on Friday, March 22nd. There were a plethora of people present. We went through a lot of information. First, we talked about parks capital projects. We touched on work happening at Finch Creek Park with a few different community partners. We also touched on an opportunity to work with Janus and Hamilton County out on their property out west. And then we touched on the trail linking Federal Hill and Forest Park, which will be constructed later this year. Talked about decorative crosswalks that are in the process of being funded by that committee. And then we spent a lot of time talking about the project that NDOT is working on State Road 32. The closure, they sent official notice that that closure will begin on April 1st. And we'll start with the reconstruction of the 16th Street intersection at 32. That'll take approximately 3 weeks. All of those timelines are on their website, which we have linked to our social media. So I would encourage anyone in that route and business owners downtown to reference the NDOT website on their project that they are continuing to update. Touched on the 3 4-way flashers, which are under construction and will be finished soon. And then just talked over an overview of the development updates at Village at Federal Hill, East Bank, and the other economic development opportunities downtown.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Smith? Finance Committee. Mike Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. We met March 21st. Dave Johnson, Megan Wiles, and myself. Amy Smith discussed with us an update on the tax increment finance resource summary, which included a review of the financial reports and projections for the city's TIF allocation areas. That and the claims come to the council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Davis?
Mr. President, I would move that we approve the claims as presented.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the claims as a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 7-0. Previously discussed ordinances. Council to consider ordinance 050324, an ordinance approving an additional appropriation in the debt service local income tax debt sinking fund to provide funding for the Levinson Garage bond payment. Ian Zagowski.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. This is the second reading of this ordinance. As a brief recap, this fund, part of its purpose is to serve as the secondary payment method for a bond payment that is primarily paid from any revenue that's generated by the Levinson TIF. Due to a error in the revenue projections for that TIF, we under budgeted the amount of debt payment that would be paid out of this fund. So this is just an additional appropriation request of $150,000 so that we can cover the remainder of that debt payment.
Any questions? Seeing none, I will open up the public hearing for ordinance 050324.
Mr. President, seeing no one come forward, I would move that we close the public hearing for ordinance 0503-24.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to close the public hearing for ordinance 050324. There's a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 7-0.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I would move that we approve ordinance number 05-03-24 as presented.
Second.
There's a motion to approve ordinance 050324 and a second. This is a roll call vote.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Elliott?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Thurston?
Aye.
Ms. Wiles?
Aye.
Mr. Peterson?
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nay. The ordinance is approved.
Thank you. Council to consider ordinance 070324, an ordinance approving an additional appropriation in the Parks Program Fund to appropriate proceeds received from the sale of used golf carts. Ian Zagowski.
Yes, again, thank you. So this is a request for additional appropriation in the 110 Parks Programs Fund. The Parks Department had purchased 105 new golf carts. Part of the financing plan for those new golf carts was to sell the old golf carts. There was 94 of them that were sold, and use the net proceeds of that sale towards the financing of the new golf carts. The net proceeds from that sale was $263,639, all of which is going to go towards that financing.
Any questions? If there are no questions, I will open up the public hearing for ordinance 070324.
Mr. President, seeing no one come forward, I would move that we close the public hearing for ordinance 07-03-24.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to close the public hearing for ordinance 070324 and a second. There's a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 7-0.
Mr. President, I would move that we approve ordinance number 07-03-24 as presented.
Second.
There's a motion to approve ordinance 070324 and a second. There's a roll call vote.
Mr. Elliott?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Thurston?
Aye.
Ms. Wiles?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Peterson?
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nay. The ordinance is approved.
Thank you. Council to consider ordinance 080324, an ordinance approving an additional appropriation in the American Rescue Plan Local Fund. Ian Zagowski.
Yes, thank you. So this one specifically relates to the Forest Park Aquatic Center. Last year, there was a study done to evaluate the health of the aquatic center. There's a number of issues that were discovered during that study, and some of them were considered critical and need to be repaired prior to the opening of the season. So this is an additional appropriation of the ARPA funds to go towards that purpose. Additionally, there's $150,000 of this that's going to go towards the building of a net between the baseball diamonds and the aquatic center, just to put up some additional safety barriers and prevent those balls from coming over and hitting our pool attendees.
Any questions?
I have a quick question. This might be a better one for Mr. Light. The rest of those ARPA funds, when do they have to be expended by this year, correct?
So Matt Light, Deputy Mayor, thanks Councilor Smith. Those have to be obligated by the end of
Okay.
2024 and spent by the end of 2025.
Okay.
And we're going to be bringing a couple of other recommendations to you at a work session next month when we provide an update on the 10-year capital improvement plan.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Any other questions?
Good question.
Seeing none, I will open up the public hearing for ordinance 080324.
Mr. President, seeing no one come forward from the public, I would move that we close the public hearing for ordinance 08-03-24.
Second.
There's a motion to close the public hearing for ordinance 080324 in a second. There's a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 7-0.
Mr. President, I would move that we approve ordinance number 0803-24 as presented.
There's a motion to approve,
Second.
sorry. Motion to approve ordinance 080324 in a second. This is a roll call vote.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Thurston?
Aye.
Ms. Wiles?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Elliott?
Aye.
Mr. Peterson?
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nay, the ordinance is approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Miscellaneous. Council to consider resolution RC 1524, confirmatory resolution designating an economic revitalization area for Justice at Promenade. Amy Smith.
Good evening. The resolution before you approves the economic revitalization area and tax abatement for the Justice Headquarters that will locate at Promenade, just south of the Promenade Apartments. No details of the project have changed since this body approved the declaratory resolution at its February 27th meeting. The approval does require a public hearing, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions? Seeing none, I will open up the public hearing for resolution RC 1524.
Mr. President, seeing no one come up from the public for resolution, I would move that we close the public hearing for resolution RC 15-24.
Second.
The motion to close the public hearing for RC 1524. And a second, there's a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand.
Mr. President, I would move that we approve resolution RC-15-24 as presented.
Second.
There's a motion to approve resolution RC 1524 in a second. There's a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you.
Thank you.
On to council comments.
I have one real fast. I meant to mention this in the Downtown District Committee. We have a pre-eclipse party being held on April 6th. Mrs. Johnson said that there's going to be food trucks and it's going to be a kickoff to all the eclipse activities happening later, a few days later.
April 8th.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other council comments?
Mr. President, I had one. I received an email and had a couple of phone calls about the Parks Department recent daddy-daughter dance with the princesses and everything. Just wanted to give hats off to the Parks Department. Lots of great feedback. I got an email that I forwarded on to the Parks Department and the mayor, just letting them know how much they really appreciated, loved being in a community that did that. They had been to some other ones, but not nearly as well done as what the Parks Department put on. So kudos to the Parks Department.
Thank you. Any other comments? We're adjourned.